I paid $2,500 for my granddaughter's sweet 16. A week later, my daughter-in-law texted, "You're uninvited." The night before I canceled everything, my son called 50 times. When I answered, I only said, The phone vibrates for the 51st time. The screen glows in the darkness of the living room, displaying the name, Brandon. I sit in Roger's old chair and watch this dance of light and sound. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Outside the window is the silence of our quiet suburb, where even the dogs are asleep. And in my head, like a broken record, I replay the words from the message that came a week ago. She doesn't want old people ruining everything. You're not invited. I just canceled the banquet. $19,500. The band, flowers, catering, photographer, DJ, even those stupid pink and gold balloons that Tracy wanted so badly. It all disappeared in an hour of phone calls. The party is in 12 hours, and Brandon apparently just found out. The phone won't stop ringing. 52. 53. When Roger died 5 years ago, I thought things couldn't get any worse. A heart attack took him in a matter of minutes. He was still eating breakfast, reading the newspaper, laughing at some joke about politicians. An hour later, he was gone. 37 years together. He was a railroad mechanic. I was an accountant at an insurance company. Nothing special, nothing glamorous, just life. We saved money little by little. Didn't allow ourselves any luxuries. After his death, insurance and pension gave me a safety net. Not luxury, but peace of mind. The only thing that kept me afloat then was Tracy, my granddaughter. She was 11 at the time, and she came to see me every Saturday. We baked cookies, watched old musicals, and she told me about school, her friends, and Jason, the boy she liked but would never tell. She was my ray of sunshine in that darkness. Brandon married Tiffany 12 years ago. I was happy then. My only son, the manager of a logistics center who always worked so hard, had finally found someone. Tiffany worked as an administrator at a dental clinic, smiled a bright white smile, and said all the right things. At first, everything was fine. She even came to my house for coffee, asked about family recipes, and sought advice about Brandon. But in recent years, something has changed. She started making comments. At first, they were subtle. "Diana, maybe you shouldn't give Tracy so many sweets." Then harsher ones, "You're interfering too much in her upbringing. Brandon and I know what to do." And finally, "She's not a little girl anymore. She needs space, not a grandmother who controls everything." Controlling? I just loved my granddaughter. Is that a crime? Last fall, Tracy was looking through a catalog of wedding dresses in my living room. She loved coming to my place after school, when she suddenly said, "Grandma, do you know what Sweet 16 is?" Of course I had. It's an American tradition to have a big party on your 16th birthday. Tracy showed me a photo on Instagram. Girls in fancy dresses, decorations, music, hundreds of guests. "It's like a fairy tale," she whispered, and I saw that sparkle in her eyes. "Would you like a party like that?" I asked. She laughed. "Mom and Dad say it's too expensive. They say a simple dinner with the family is enough." So I made an offer. Without hesitation, "I'll pay for everything. It will be my gift to you, dear." Brandon refused at first. We even had an argument. He said I shouldn't spend so much, that it was their responsibility as parents. But I insisted. "It's my money, my choice, my granddaughter." He sighed and gave in. Tiffany seemed to agree too, even thanking me and hugging me in the kitchen. "Diana, this is so generous of you. Tracy will be thrilled." I spent months preparing. I found a wonderful hall in the city center and ordered decorations in the pink and gold colors that Tracy loved. I hired a youth band. Of course, I don't know anything about their music, but my granddaughter showed me their videos, and they seemed decent. I agreed on the menu with the catering company, hired a photographer, even a DJ for dancing. Everything had to be perfect. And then, exactly a week ago, that message from Tiffany came. I was drinking my evening tea, reviewing the final guest list. My phone beeped. A new message. "Diana, we need to talk. Tracy said she doesn't want old people ruining everything. She wants a youth party without grandmas and grandpas. You're not invited. I hope you understand." I reread it 3 times. Then again, old people, ruining things, not invited. I took a screenshot. My hands were shaking so much that I could barely press the button. Then I sat and stared at the ceiling for an hour, maybe 2. Only one thought was spinning in my head. I had spent $19,500 on a party for a child who, it turns out, didn't want me there. The next morning, I started making calls, first to the venue. I canceled the reservation. The manager asked in surprise if everything was okay, and I just said, "Circumstances have changed." Then the band, the caterer, the photographer, the DJ. Everyone asked the same question, and I repeated like a mantra, "The party isn't happening." I lost some of the money. Deposits are non-refundable. But I didn't care. Tiffany's message burned something inside me, and I acted automatically, methodically. By evening, everything was canceled. I didn't write to anyone. I didn't warn anyone. I just did what I thought was right. The phone vibrates for the 52nd time. I look at the screen. "Brandon." My hand reaches out and finally touches the answer button. "Mom, what have you done?" My son's voice trembles so much that I can barely recognize it. Panic, anger, despair, all at once. I am silent for a second. Then I say calmly, coldly, clearly, as if reading the balance sheet in a report. "What I should have done a long time ago. I am teaching your wife respect." Brandon appeared at the door at 8 in the morning. I hadn't had time to drink my coffee yet. I was standing by the stove, waiting for the kettle to boil. I heard a sharp knock on the door, and my heart skipped a beat. I knew it was him. I opened the door, and he burst into the hallway, his face red, his eyes bloodshot. It seemed like he hadn't slept all night. "Mom, do you even realize what you've done?" His voice was breaking with anger. I took a step back, leaning my back against the wall. Brandon had never yelled at me before. Even as a teenager, when he was rebelling against everything in the world, he just kept quiet and withdrew into himself. But now, an explosion. Tracy cried all night. Their whole group already knew about the party. They were buying dresses, making plans, and now what? Now she's too embarrassed to go to school. I took a breath, trying to speak calmly. "Brandon, I did it because your wife wrote to me." "Tiffany says she didn't write anything," he interrupted. "She says you made it all up." I froze. The kettle whistled behind me, but I didn't move. "Made it up? Brandon, I have a message. Show me." He reached out his hand. I went to the living room and picked up my phone from the coffee table. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from indignation. I opened the Messenger app and found the conversation with Tiffany. I scrolled up and down. The message was gone. It had simply disappeared. "Well?" Brandon stood behind me, breathing heavily. "It was here," I whispered. "I saw it. I read it. I took a screenshot." "A screenshot? Then show me the screenshot." I opened the gallery. I scrolled through the latest photos. There were pictures of flowers from my garden that I had taken the day before yesterday, an old photo of Roger that I had found in a drawer, a photo of a recipe from a cookbook, but there was no screenshot of the message. Not at all. "Mom," Brandon's voice softened, which was even more frightening. "Maybe you imagined it. Maybe you got it wrong." I turned to him sharply. "I didn't get it wrong. I'm not crazy, Brandon. It was here." He put his hand on my shoulder, and in his eyes I saw what I feared most: pity. He pitied me. He treated me like an old sick woman who needed help. "Maybe you should see a doctor just to get checked out. Dad had his time. Don't you dare compare me to your father." I pulled my shoulder away. "Roger had a heart attack, not mental problems, and I don't have any either." Brandon sighed and ran his hand over his face. Okay, Mom. But what am I supposed to tell Tiffany? Tracy? How am I going to explain this to them? Tell them the truth. that your wife insulted me, and I responded in the only way I knew how. He looked at me as if I had just hit him. He turned and left without even saying goodbye. The door slammed so loudly that the window rattled. I stood in the middle of the living room with the phone in my hands. The kettle had long since stopped whistling. The house was deathly quiet. The next few days were hell. Tracy didn't answer my calls. I wrote her messages. Short, cautious ones. "Honey, let's talk. Grandma loves you." She marked them as read, but didn't reply. Once I tried calling again, she hung up. A minute later, I got a message from Brandon. "Mom, don't call her right now. Give it time." Time. As if time would solve anything. I found out from Wilma, my only friend, the cashier at the supermarket where I shop, that Tiffany was telling everyone her version of events. Wilma heard it from her niece, who was in the same dance class as Tracy. The crazy mother-in-law ruined the party with her nonsense. Poor Tiffany doesn't know what to do. She'll probably have to put her mother-in-law in a nursing home. A nursing home. I, Diana Corbett, who kept accounts without a single mistake for 30 years, who after my husband's death independently dealt with insurance, taxes, investments, suddenly became an incapacitated old woman who needs to be placed somewhere. Wilma came to see me that evening. She brought wine, cheap, with a plastic cork, the kind we drink once a month while watching TV series. She hugged me at the door. "Dee, I believe you. I know you didn't make it up." I burst into tears. For the first time in all these days, I just stood in the hallway and cried on the shoulder of a woman who works as a cashier and barely makes ends meet after 2 divorces, but who turned out to be the only person who believed me. We sat down in the kitchen. Wilma poured wine into our old glasses. "I don't have any wine glasses. Roger didn't like them." "Listen," she said, "are you sure you took a screenshot?" "Yes, I'm sure. I remember pressing 2 buttons and hearing the camera click. Then it must be somewhere on your phone. Photos don't just disappear." "But I looked through the whole gallery." Wilma thoughtfully twirled the glass in her hands. "You know, my younger son accidentally deleted all my photos once, and the guy at the repair shop recovered them. He said that even deleted files remain in memory until they are overwritten. Maybe you could try." I looked at her, but Wilma smiled. "The repair shop is on Maple Street near the old laundromat. There's a guy who works there, Kevin. They say he's a genius at this stuff." The next day I went there. The workshop turned out to be tiny. A shop window plastered with repair notices, cramped inside, smelling of solder and plastic. Behind the counter sat a thin guy of about 25, wearing a t-shirt with some kind of logo and headphones. When I entered, he took off one earphone and looked at me. "Can I help you?" I put my phone on the counter. "I need to recover some deleted photos. Can you do that?" Kevin took the phone and turned it over in his hands. "How long ago were they deleted?" "A week ago, maybe less." "It's possible. Leave your phone here and come back in a couple of hours." I paid a $50 deposit and went to wander around the city. I went to a coffee shop across the street and ordered tea, which I didn't drink. I just sat and looked out the window, watching people pass by. Young mothers with strollers, teenagers with phones, men in suits. They were all living their lives, and no one cared about an old woman trying to prove she wasn't crazy. 2 hours later, I returned. Kevin was waiting, holding my phone and a piece of paper. "I found it," he said. "Here's your screenshot." He placed the printout in front of me. I recognized my message from Tiffany, every word. "Diana, we need to talk. Tracy said she doesn't want old people ruining everything. She wants a youth party without grandmas and grandpas. You're not invited. I hope you understand." My hands were shaking again. I took the paper and pressed it to my chest. Is this really the same thing?" "Yes." "What's more?" Kevin turned his computer screen toward me. I checked the metadata. The message was sent from someone else's phone and then deleted from both devices via a synchronization app. This can be done remotely if you know how. I looked at him, not understanding. What does that mean? It means that someone deliberately deleted this message from your phone and theirs, so there would be no evidence. I sat down on a chair near the counter. My legs were shaking. Kevin handed me a glass of water. "Ma'am, are you feeling okay?" I nodded and took a sip. The water was warm with a hint of chlorine. "Can you print me another copy?" He printed 2. I paid him the rest of the money, thanked him, and went out into the street clutching the papers in my hand. Evidence. I finally had evidence. I got into the car and put the printouts on the passenger seat. I started the engine but didn't drive away. I just sat there and looked at those sheets of paper. Now I have a choice. I can show this to Brandon, and he'll find out that his wife not only insulted me, but also deliberately destroyed evidence to make me look crazy. He'll find out that Tiffany manipulated him, took advantage of his trust, and then what? Will their marriage fall apart? Will Tracy suffer even more? Or I can keep quiet. Leave these papers in the drawer. Let everyone continue to think that I'm an old, crazy woman who makes things up. Let Tiffany win. I sat in the car for another 15 minutes staring at those printouts. Then I started the engine and drove home. The papers are now on my kitchen table. I look at them and still can't decide what to do next. I decided that Brandon needed to see the evidence. Not at home, not with Tiffany or Tracy there, alone, when he couldn't escape the conversation. So I drove to his work. The logistics center is located on the outskirts of town, a huge hangar with gray walls and dozens of trucks at the ramp. I'd never been there before. Brandon didn't like me interfering in his work. He said it was his territory, his own space, where he was his own boss. But right now, I didn't care what he liked or didn't like. I parked near the entrance and took the printout out of my bag. The paper trembled slightly in my hands. I took a breath and got out of the car. The receptionist, a young girl with bright red hair and a nose piercing, looked at me in surprise. "Who are you here to see?" "Brandon Corbett. I'm his mother." Aha. She picked up the phone and dialed the number. "Brandon, your mother is here." "Yes, downstairs. Okay." She hung up and nodded to me. "Office 203, second floor, at the end of the corridor on the left." I climbed the stairs slowly. My knees had started to hurt lately, especially on stairs. 63 years old is no joke, even though I try not to think about my age. The hallway was long with linoleum that creaked underfoot. It smelled of coffee and paper. The office door was half open. Brandon was sitting at a desk covered with folders and reports, typing something on the computer, frowning. When I knocked, he flinched. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I went in, closed the door behind me, and put the printout on his desk, right on top of some report with graphs. "Read it." He looked at the paper, then at me. I saw anxiety in his eyes. He took the printout and began to read. I watched as his face gradually paled and his lips tightened. He read slowly, carefully, his eyes rereading some sentences twice. Then he put the sheet down on the desk and wiped his face with his palm. There was a long pause. The clock on the wall ticked so loudly as if counting down something important. Outside the window, someone started a truck, the engine roaring. "Where did this come from?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. "The guy at the repair shop recovered the deleted data. It's a real message, Brandon. Tiffany wrote it and then deleted it from both phones, so there would be no evidence. She knew what she was doing." He was silent again. He stared at the paper as if trying to find something in it that would explain everything differently. His hands lay on the table, his fingers intertwined so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Tell me you believe me. That you don't think I'm a crazy old woman who gets everything wrong." He looked at me, and there was so much pain in his eyes. "Mom, I never thought you were crazy. I just couldn't believe Tiffany was capable of doing something like this." "And now you believe me?" He nodded, his head bowed. "What do you want me to do?" His voice was quiet, tired. "I want you to talk to your wife. I want her to admit she lied. to apologize to me and to Tracy. Brandon ran his hand through his hair, a habit he had picked up from Roger. My late husband used to do the same thing when he was wrestling with difficult decisions. I'll talk to her, but give me time, Mom. This is complicated. It's our marriage. We need to figure this out ourselves, without outsiders. Okay, I said, even though inside I was screaming about the injustice. But don't drag it out. I'm not going to put up with this humiliation any longer. I have a right to at least a modicum of respect, Brandon. At least from my own family. He nodded without looking up. I left, leaving the printout on his desk. In the hallway, I met a man with a briefcase, and he nodded to me in a friendly manner. I responded automatically, even though I could barely see him through the fog in my head. In the evening, when I had already gone to bed with a book, I was reading some detective story but couldn't concentrate on the plot. To me, the phone rang. Unknown number. I'm always afraid of calls from unknown numbers. What if something happened? What if it's bad news? Roger died during the day, but it seems to me that terrible news always comes at night. I picked up the phone. Hello? Diana Corbett? A woman's voice, firm but not rude. It had a commanding tone. Yes, that's me. My name is Barbara Miller. I'm Tiffany's mother. Tracy told me about what happened at the party. I'd like to talk to you if you don't mind, in person. I sat down on the bed and turned on the lamp. Barbara. I had only seen Tracy's other grandmother a few times, at the wedding, then at her granddaughter's christening, and once at a family barbecue 3 years ago. We exchanged polite phrases, talked about the weather, and how beautiful Tracy was growing up. But we never got to know each other better. I had the impression that she was a tough, straightforward woman who didn't stand on ceremony. What do you want to talk about? I asked cautiously. About what's really going on. My daughter says one thing, you probably say another. My granddaughter is crying and doesn't understand why the adults can't agree. I want to understand the truth. Can we meet tomorrow? I'm free after lunch. I agreed. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop on Chapper Street at 2 p.m. The next day, I arrived 15 minutes early. Barbara showed up right on time at 2. She was a tall, slender woman of about 59 with short gray hair, jeans, and a simple white shirt. No makeup, no jewelry, except for a simple watch on her wrist. She walked confidently, like someone who was afraid of nothing in the world. She approached my table and held out her hand. Diana, thank you for agreeing to meet. We ordered coffee. I had a cappuccino. She had a black Americano without sugar. Barbara didn't waste time on small talk, didn't ask how I got there or how I was feeling. So, tell me your version of events. Why did you cancel the party? I told her everything about the message, about how I organized the party, how much time I spent, how I chose every detail so that my granddaughter would like it, about the words, old people ruin everything, about how Tiffany deleted the evidence, about how I was accused of senile confusion and hinted at dementia. Then I took the second printout out of my bag and placed it in front of Barbara. She took the paper and read it carefully. Her face remained calm and impenetrable, but I noticed her jaw twitch. She put down the printout, took a sip of coffee, and was silent for a long time, staring out the window. My daughter has always been selfish, she said finally, and there was no regret in her voice, just a statement of fact, like a doctor's diagnosis. I hoped that motherhood would change her, that having Tracy would make her softer, more responsible, but it seems I was wrong. I remained silent, letting her speak, afraid to interrupt. Tiffany wanted to be the center of attention from childhood. When she was 4, I divorced her father. He drank, lost his job, could disappear for a week without explanation. I couldn't take that hell anymore. But Tiffany didn't understand the reasons. She just knew that her dad was gone and wouldn't be coming back. And I tried to compensate for his absence. I bought her the toys she wanted, took her to dance, music, and swimming lessons. I gave her everything she asked for, afraid to refuse. Now I realize that I made a big mistake. I raised a daughter who thinks that the world should revolve around her, that everyone is obliged to fulfill her desires." Barbara paused, twirling the cup in her hands. "She's jealous of you, Diana. Jealous because Tracy loves you naturally, easily. But between her and her daughter, there's always tension, always some kind of argument. Tiffany thinks you're taking Tracy away from her, that you're making her a bad mother." "I never tried to." "I know," Barbara interrupted. "I know you just love your granddaughter. I love her too, but Tiffany, she's my daughter, and I know her better. She doesn't need reality. She needs an excuse for her behavior, someone to blame." I felt something tighten in my chest. All these months, all these years, Tiffany had been looking for a reason to push me away from her granddaughter. And finally, she found one. Barbara looked me straight in the eye. "I'm on your side, Diane. My daughter did a disgusting, despicable thing. She has to apologize. But I ask you one thing. If you really want to keep this family together, give her a chance to make amends. Tiffany is not a bad person. She just lost her way, lost herself." We sat for a while longer talking about Tracy, about how quickly children grow up, how times change. Barbara told me that she had worked as a school nurse for 30 years, seeing thousands of children and their parents. She retired a year ago and now doesn't know what to do with herself. She's used to being constantly busy. She lives alone in a small apartment on the second floor, and her granddaughter rarely visits. Tiffany doesn't really encourage their meetings, always finding reasons why Tracy can't come. "She's jealous of everyone," Barbara said without bitterness, simply as a statement of fact. "Me, you, even Tracy's school friends, who take away my daughter's time and attention." As we said goodbye at the cafe exit, she squeezed my hand tightly with both hands. "I'll talk to her. I'll have a serious talk with her, I promise you." I drove home with strange, conflicting feelings. On the one hand, I felt relieved that someone else had seen the truth, that I was not alone in this battle. On the other hand, Barbara asked me to give Tiffany a chance, and I didn't know if I was ready for that, if I had enough generosity in me. That same evening, around 9 o'clock, when I had already changed into my bathrobe and was about to make myself a soothing cup of tea, Wilma called. Her voice was anxious and agitated. "Dee, I need to see you right now urgently. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Be ready." She arrived even earlier, completely agitated, without even taking off her coat in the hallway or taking off her shoes. I was just at that cafe on Harvard Avenue, the one that makes those shrimp salads. I was sitting by the window, reading a magazine, waiting for my order. And I saw Tiffany. My heart skipped a beat. I felt like I was about to hear something bad. So what? She could have just been, having lunch or meeting a friend. Not alone. Wilma took out her phone and started looking for something in her gallery. With a man, and it's definitely not Brandon. She showed me the photo. In the picture, taken through the cafe window, a little blurry but quite clear, I saw Tiffany. She was sitting at a table in the far corner across from a man, about 35 years old, dark hair, white-toothed smile, athletic build. They were sitting very close, leaning toward each other across the table. Their hands were on the table, intertwined in the middle. Tiffany was laughing, her head thrown back, and even in the photo you could see her eyes shining. "Who is that?" I asked, even though I was afraid of the answer. "I don't know, but they're clearly not just colleagues or old friends. Look how they're holding hands. Look at her face. This isn't a business meeting, Dee." I zoomed in on the photo with 2 fingers. Their hands were indeed intertwined tightly, their fingers clasped. Tiffany leaned so close to the man that their faces were almost touching. This was not a casual touch, not a gesture of support or comfort. It was something else, something intimate. "Can you send me that photo?" I asked, my voice sounding strange. Wilma nodded and immediately sent it to me via messenger. We went into the kitchen and I put the kettle on. We drank tea, but I could hardly taste it. I just held the hot cup in my hands and stared at one spot. Wilma tried to talk about something else, about work, about her new neighbor who always parks in the wrong spot, but I hardly heard her. Wilma left around 11, hugging me goodbye, and I stayed sitting in the kitchen, staring at my phone. Tiffany is cheating on Brandon, or she's going to cheat on him. Or she already has, and this isn't their first meeting, not the first time they've sat so close, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes. I don't know for sure, but the photo speaks for itself. Even to me, an old-school woman who grew up in a time when such things were treated more simply or more complicatedly, depending on how you look at it, it's clear that this is not friendship. Now I have another trump card, another proof that Tiffany is not a saint, that she's not a victim of a crazy mother-in-law, but a woman who is destroying her own family, who lies and manipulates. But what am I supposed to do with this? I can show the photo to Barbara. She just asked me to give her daughter a chance, saying that Tiffany was simply lost. I can show it to Brandon and completely destroy what's left of his marriage, take away his last illusion of a happy family. I can keep quiet and give Tiffany the same chance to make amends that Barbara talked about. But does she deserve that chance? Won't she use it again against me, against Brandon? I sit in the kitchen, my phone on the table in front of me. The photo is open on the screen. Tiffany and that man, their hands intertwined, her laughter, his smile. Outside the window, it's dark. Only a distant streetlight shining through the curtain. The clock on the wall shows 11:30. I look at the phone and try to figure out who I want to be. A woman who believes in second chances and that people can change, or a woman who punishes mistakes and protects her family at all costs. For now, I just sit in the darkness of my kitchen and search for those answers. I didn't sleep until morning. I sat in the kitchen, looked at the photo, and thought. At 5 a.m, I made a decision. I would show it to Barbara, not Brandon. My son is already exhausted, and if I lay this on him, too, everything could fall apart. Barbara knows her daughter better than anyone. She will be able to act as necessary without unnecessary emotions. I called her at 9 a.m, hoping not to wake her up. Barbara, it's Diana. Sorry for calling so early. We need to meet again. Something has come up. It's important. She didn't ask for details over the phone. She just said, same cafe in an hour. I'll be there. I arrived first, ordered a coffee, which I didn't drink. I just held the cup in my hands, looking at the entrance. Barbara appeared exactly an hour later, sat down opposite me, and looked at me intently. What happened? I could tell from your voice that something serious had happened. I silently handed her my phone with the photo open. She took it, looked closely, frowned, and zoomed in with 2 fingers. Her face froze before my eyes, her jaw clenched so tightly that the corners of her lips turned white. She stared at the screen for a long time, then slowly put the phone down on the table. It's Greg, she said quietly, but her voice trembled with barely contained anger. The dentist from the clinic, where Tiffany works. She's mentioned him too often in recent months, telling me how smart he was, how professionally he treated his patients, how skilled he was. I even joked at the time that I'd fallen in love with a colleague. She laughed, waved it off, and said I was imagining things. It turns out I wasn't wrong. Barbara handed me back my phone, took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment. When did they do it? Last night. My friend accidentally saw them in a cafe sitting by the window. Barbara nodded, pushed her half-finished cup of coffee aside, and took her phone out of her bag. She called someone without leaving the table. I could only hear her side of the conversation, but her voice was firm and uncompromising. Tiffany, it's Mom. I need to talk to you. Now. Yes, right now. Immediately. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Be home alone. No Brandon, no Tracy. This is very important. Don't argue. I don't care if you have a headache. I'll be there in 20 minutes, period. She hung up without waiting for a response and put her phone back in her bag. Diana, go home. I'll deal with her myself. This needs to be a conversation between mother and daughter, without witnesses. I'll call you later and let you know how it went. I wanted to argue, but Barbara looked at me and added firmly, Trust me, Diana. I know my daughter. I know how to talk to her so that she understands. It has to be done my way, otherwise she'll find excuses and wriggle out of it. This way she won't have a chance. I went home and spent the whole day doing something. I tried to read. I couldn't remember a single sentence. I cleaned. I washed the same cup 3 times. I turned on the TV. Some talk show about renovations, but the words flew right past me. The clock on the wall ticked unbearably slowly. Every minute seemed like an hour. I paced around the house, unable to find my place, imagining what was happening at Brandon's house. At 4 o'clock, Barbara finally called. "Can I come over? I want to tell you in person, not over the phone. It will take some time." Half an hour later, she was sitting in my living room, in the same armchair where Roger used to love to sit and read the evening paper. She looked tired, her face gaunt, dark circles under her eyes, as if she had aged several years in a single day. "It was a difficult conversation," Barbara began, accepting the cup of tea I offered her. I showed her the photo. I put the phone on the table in front of her and just sat there silently watching. At first she denied it, of course. She said it was just a colleague, that they were discussing work issues, some patient's medical history. I asked if they always discuss medical histories while holding hands tightly and looking into each other's eyes as if no one else in the world existed. She fell silent and lowered her head. Barbara took a sip of tea and placed the cup on the saucer with a soft clink. Then she confessed. Not right away. She was silent for a long time, but she confessed. Greg had been hitting on her for the last 6 months, maybe even longer. At first, it was just compliments, attention, innocent jokes by the water cooler. Then he started inviting her for coffee after work, saying he wanted to consult with a colleague, discuss something. She agreed. Once and twice, 3 times. It became a habit. She told everyone she was staying late because of paperwork and inventory, meetings. She lied constantly. I listened silently, clutching my cup in my hands, feeling the hot ceramic burn my palms. She told me, Barbara continued, her voice tinged with bitterness, that with Greg, she enjoyed feeling like an attractive, desirable woman. Not just a mom who drives her kid to dance class, checks his homework, and packs his lunch boxes. Not just a wife who irons, cooks, cleans, and collapses from exhaustion at night. That she and Brandon had stopped talking about anything other than bills, Tracy's schedule, and things that needed to be fixed around the house. That she felt invisible, stuck in a rut. But Greg saw her, listened to her, was interested in her thoughts and her life. Barbara rubbed her face with her palms, and I could see how hard it was for her to talk about all this. There was no physical betrayal. At least she swears there wasn't, and I believe her. Just talking, touching, flirting, glances. Emotional betrayal, if you want to call it that. But we both know it was only a matter of time. Another month, maybe 2, and she would have crossed that line. I saw it in her eyes when she talked about him. "What did you say to her?" I asked quietly. Barbara straightened up, and her figure took on the same firmness I had seen in the coffee shop. I gave her a choice. Clear, with no options. Either she ends all these games with Greg right now, today. She calls him in front of me and says she won't see him again under any circumstances. She publicly apologizes to you and Tracy for that message and all the lies. She goes to family therapy with Brandon and tells him the truth about Greg, about your message, about everything. Or I'll tell Brandon everything myself, down to the last detail. I'll show him a printout of your message and the photo with Greg. Then he can decide for himself if he wants to stay with a woman who betrayed his trust. And what did she do? I could barely breathe. She cried. She cried for a long time, sitting on the couch, sobbing like a teenager. She said she didn't mean to hurt anyone, that it all happened by accident, that she didn't know how it happened, how she got involved in all this. Typical excuses of someone who got caught. It hasn't worked on me for a long time. But then, when I was about to leave, when I got up and grabbed my bag, she grabbed my hand. She said she would do anything I asked, anything. That she was afraid of losing her family, that she couldn't imagine life without Brandon and Tracy. Barbara got up from her chair, walked over to the window, and looked out at my small garden, where the leaves on the trees were already beginning to turn yellow. "She'll come to you tomorrow morning to apologize. I warned her, if it's insincere, if I hear even the slightest falsehood in her voice, if I see that she's just playing a role, doing her job, I'll tell Brandon everything anyway. And I'll add that she lied while apologizing. I won't let her manipulate me again." The next day, around 11 in the morning, when I was watering the flowers in the hallway, the doorbell rang, 3 short rings. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door. Tiffany was standing on the doorstep, pale as chalk with red, swollen eyes without a trace of makeup. I had never seen her like this before. She was wearing simple jeans and a gray t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, traces of tears on her face. She looked much older than her 36, as if she had aged 10 years overnight. "Can I come in?" Her voice was hoarse, barely audible. I stepped back, letting her in. We walked into the living room in silence. Tiffany sat down on the edge of the sofa, her back straight, her hands clenched so tightly on her knees that her knuckles turned white. I sat down in the armchair opposite her and waited. "Diana, I came to apologize," she said, and it sounded mechanical, like a memorized phrase. I had no right to write that message. I had no right to delete it and accuse you of senile confusion. It was cruel, unfair, and mean. I'm sorry. I sat in the chair and said nothing. I just looked at her without saying a word, without nodding, without giving any sign. I let her feel the awkwardness, the pause. Tiffany looked up, met my gaze, and suddenly her face fell, broke down. She cried, not quietly, not neatly, but loudly, genuinely like a child, covering her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I envied you," she exclaimed through her tears, gasping for breath. "I envied you every day, every minute. I envied that Tracy loved you so easily, so naturally, so sincerely, that she runs to you after school with shining eyes, tells you everything, laughs with you, hugs you just because. But with me, there's always tension, always these arguments over trifles. I tell her to do her homework, and she rolls her eyes and grumbles. I ask her to help around the house, and she sighs as if I'm forcing her to do hard labor. But she comes to you with joy, bakes cookies with you, watches old movies, and looks at you with eyes that say you're the best person in the whole world." Tiffany wiped her face with her hands, but the tears didn't stop, flowing again and again. "I was afraid I was losing my daughter, that she loved you more, much more than me, her own mother. I felt like a bad mother, a complete failure, a woman who couldn't even raise her child properly. And instead of working on myself, reading books on parenting, going to a psychologist, trying to be better, more patient, I blamed you. I thought that if I pushed you away, if I limited your communication with Tracy, she would automatically become closer to me. But I was wrong. Terribly wrong. I ruined everything, destroyed everything." I sat and listened, feeling something soften inside me. Not forgiveness yet, not right away, but understanding. I saw before me not a cold, calculating manipulator, but a frightened, confused woman who couldn't cope with her fears and complexes, who had chosen the wrong path. "What about Greg?" I asked quietly, almost in a whisper. Tiffany flinched, as if from a physical blow, and pressed her hands to her chest. "Did Mom tell you?" "It doesn't matter how I know, just answer honestly." She nodded, lowering her head so low that her chin touched her chest. "There was nothing serious with Greg, well, almost nothing. We just talked a lot, met for coffee after work several times a week. He listened to me, really listened, was interested in my life, my thoughts, my feelings. Brandon and I stopped talking about anything except mundane things. Electricity bills, Tracy's schedule, what to buy at the store. We became strangers who just lived in the same house. I felt invisible to my own husband, but Greg saw me. But I stopped. I didn't go any further, I swear. When my mom showed me that photo, I realized how far I had gone, how close I was to the edge of the abyss. I called Greg yesterday and told him we wouldn't be seeing each other anymore, that I wanted to keep my family together, to save my marriage. I looked at her for a long time, thinking about every word. Then I slowly said, if you really want to change something, do it every day, and first and foremost for yourself. Not for me, not to justify yourself to me. For Tracy, she needs a mother who will be there for her, a real mother, not a mother who is jealous of her grandmother and pushes everyone away. And for your husband, he also deserves sincerity, respect, and a wife who appreciates him. Talk to him, I know my son. He won't leave you. Tiffany nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I'll tell Brandon everything, every last word, about the messages, about how I deleted the evidence, about Greg, about my jealousy. Barbara gave me until tonight. If I don't tell him myself, she'll tell him for me, and then it will be even worse. She left, quietly closing the door behind her. I locked it and stood in the hallway for a long time, leaning against the wall, staring at the closed door. I felt devastated and at the same time strangely relieved, as if I had shed a heavy burden. For the next few weeks, I hardly communicated with my family, not out of resentment or revenge. I just gave them space to figure things out on their own, without my interference. I didn't call first, didn't write messages, didn't show up at their door unannounced. Wilma told me on the phone that I was too kind, that I should have pushed harder, demanded a public apology in front of all my relatives and friends who had heard Tiffany's version of the crazy mother-in-law with dementia. But I was exhausted from the conflicts, the pain, the constant tension in my stomach, the sleepless nights. And I still didn't want to destroy my son's family. He would figure it all out himself. A week later, unexpectedly on Tuesday evening, Brandon called. His voice was tired, hoarse, but calmer than it had been in recent months. Mom, Tiffany told me everything, absolutely everything, without embellishment, about the message you received, and how she deliberately deleted the evidence to make you look inadequate. And about Greg, about their meetings. I was silent, waiting for him to continue, afraid to hear him accuse me. It's very difficult for us right now, Mom. It's very, very difficult to talk, to look each other in the eye. But we've started going to family therapy with a psychologist. She says we have a real chance of saving our family if we're both willing to work honestly on our relationship. Tiffany promises to work on herself, to change, and I want to try to give her that chance too. For Tracy's sake, first and foremost, if not for ourselves. I'm glad you're at least trying, son, I said sincerely, feeling relieved. Mom, Brandon's voice suddenly trembled and broke. Please forgive me. I'm sorry I didn't believe you right away from the very first word. That I doubted you, your adequacy. I just couldn't believe that Tiffany was capable of such a despicable thing, such manipulation. But now I understand everything, and I'm terribly sorry, terribly ashamed. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, my throat tightening. It's okay, son. The main thing is that the truth is out now, that we can look each other in the eye again. We talked a little more, for almost half an hour. He said that Tracy was having a hard time with the whole situation, that she could see the tension between her parents, even though they were trying not to involve her in adult problems. That the therapist said that rebuilding trust was a long process, that 1 or 2 sessions would definitely not be enough. A few days later, on Friday evening, when I was already settled in my chair with a book and a cup of mint tea, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something compelled me to answer. Grandma! Tracy's timid, quiet voice, and I could immediately tell she had been crying. My heart skipped a beat so hard it hurt in my chest. I hadn't heard my granddaughter's voice in almost a month, the longest month of my life. Tracy, my dear. Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't call for so long that I avoided you. I just didn't know what to say, how to behave. Mom confessed everything to me last night. She told me about the message, about how she deleted the evidence, about how you're not crazy and never have been. I'm so sorry, so terribly sorry that I didn't believe you then, that I yelled at you. It's okay, my dear. You're not to blame for anything. It's the adults who caused all this trouble. There was a long pause, and I could hear her sobbing on the other end. Then she said, "Will you come over for dinner on Saturday? Dad said he'll make his famous lasagna, the same one with 3 kinds of cheese that you love so much." I smiled through the tears that were already streaming down my cheeks. "I'll come, dear. I'll definitely come." 4 months pass. Summer turns to autumn. The leaves turn yellow. The mornings get colder. I'm getting used to a new rhythm of life, where everything is a little different than it was before. My relationship with Tiffany remains complicated. We have not become friends. We do not hug when we meet. We do not call each other just to talk. But the open hostility has disappeared. When we see each other, at family dinners, when I visit Brandon, we talk briefly, politely about neutral things, the weather, flowers in the garden, a recipe I found in an old magazine. We avoid sensitive topics and don't mention what happened. It's like walking around a deep pit. You know it's there, but you try not to look down. I notice changes in Tiffany. She no longer makes those snide remarks that used to come out almost every week. She doesn't control every meeting I have with Tracy. She doesn't call her granddaughter every half hour when she's with me. Brandon looks tired. He has dark circles under his eyes that weren't so noticeable before, and there's more gray in his temples. But he's less tense than he used to be. When he comes to see me, and he comes more often now, at least once a week, sometimes alone, without Tiffany, he talks about therapy. He says that he and his wife are learning to talk to each other honestly, without accusations or defensiveness. The psychologist gives them assignments to write down their feelings, share them, and not hold grudges. "It's hard, Mom," he said last week, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee. "It's very hard to talk about what hurts. But the psychologist says that otherwise we'll just bottle everything up again and it will explode later." I'm happy for him, really happy. But I understand one thing that he may not have realized yet. Our closeness is not what it used to be. There is a mark left between us from what happened. Not an open wound, no. More like a scar that doesn't hurt when it's at rest, but reminds us of itself from time to time. When Brandon looks at me, I sometimes catch a shadow of guilt in his eyes. He still can't forgive himself for doubting me, for believing Tiffany, and I don't know how to help him let it go. Things with Tracy are slow, but steadily improving. The first few meetings after that Saturday night lasagna dinner were awkward. She seemed afraid to say the wrong thing, sat quietly, answered in monosyllables. But gradually the tension eased. We started baking cookies together again, gingerbread, her favorite, using the recipe my mother gave me. We watch old movies that she used to love, musicals where they sing and dance, where everything ends happily. Once when we were sitting on my porch with lemonade, it was a warm September evening, the sun was setting, painting the sky with pink and orange stripes, she suddenly said, "Grandma, I'm so sorry I yelled at you back then. That I didn't believe you. I didn't know the whole truth, but that's no excuse. I should have trusted you." I hugged her, held her close, feeling her tremble. "It's not your fault, my child, not at all. Adults have to deal with their own problems, not drag children into them. And anyway," I smiled, stepping back to look her in the eyes. "Is it so bad to have a sweet 17 instead of 16? Oh, you'll be older, wiser. We can do something even more spectacular." She laughed through her tears. "Really? You still want to throw me a party?" "Of course. It's my promise, and I always keep my word." The surprise came in October. Brandon called in the evening, and there was something unusual in his voice. Not anxiety, but not calm either. Something in between. "Mom, can we come over tomorrow? We have something to tell you. Tiffany will be with us." My heart skipped a beat. I immediately thought the worst, that they were breaking up, that therapy hadn't helped, that everything had fallen apart. "Of course, come over," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They arrived the next evening without Tracy. They sat next to each other on the sofa in my living room, and that was a good sign, I thought. If they were breaking up, they would have sat apart. Tiffany looked pale and nervous, twisting the edge of her sweater in her hands. Brandon held her hand. "Mom," he began, "we have news. Tiffany is pregnant." I froze. I didn't expect this, not at all. "Pregnant?" I repeated blankly. Tiffany nodded without looking up. 3 months. We're just getting used to the idea ourselves. It was unplanned, unexpected, but we've decided to keep the baby." Brandon squeezed her hand tighter. "The psychologist says it could be an opportunity, a chance to start over differently, to do everything right from the beginning." I didn't know what to say. Everything was mixed up inside me. Joy for my son, anxiety, fear, hope. On the one hand, a new child is always a miracle, always a joy. But on the other hand, I was afraid. I was afraid that it would become a new source of conflict, that Tiffany would start being jealous again, controlling me, pushing me away. That history would repeat itself, only now with even more pain. "I'm happy for you," I finally said, and I meant it. "I'm really happy. Congratulations." We sat for a while longer, drank tea, talked about the timing, about how Tracy reacted to the news. It turns out that my granddaughter was thrilled. She had wanted a little brother or sister for a long time. When they were about to leave, Tiffany lingered in the hallway while Brandon went out to the car. "Deanna," she said quietly, looking away, "when the baby is born, will you help? I'm going to need help. My mom didn't help much with Tracy. She lived far away. And now I need support." I looked at her closely. I searched her eyes for signs of manipulation, insincerity, calculation, but I saw only fear and a sincere request. She was truly afraid, truly in need of help. "I'll help," I said simply. "Of course I'll help." Tiffany nodded and smiled almost imperceptibly. "Thank you." Over the months, Barbara became something of an ally to me, even, I dare say, a friend. We began to meet regularly, once every 2 weeks, at the same coffee shop on Apple Street. We talked about everything: her granddaughter, our children, life, how difficult it is to be a mother to grown children who no longer listen to advice but still need support. Saturday arrives mid-November. The morning is cool but sunny. I sit on the porch of my house, wrapped in a blanket with a cup of hot coffee in my hands. Roger always loved sitting like this in the morning. He said it was the best time of day, when the world was still quiet, not busy with hustle and bustle. I continue this tradition, even though he's been gone for 5 years. I hear the sound of an engine. Brandon's car is pulling up. I watch as he parks near my house, gets out, and opens the back door. Tracy gets out of the car, then Tiffany, her belly already noticeable, rounded under her sweater. Brandon pulls a large basket out of the trunk. "Hi, Mom," he calls, smiling. "We brought a picnic. We thought it would be a nice day to sit in your garden by that old oak table, remember?" I get up and put my cup on the armrest of my chair. Of course I remember. The old swing Dad made for Brandon is still there. Tracy runs up to me and hugs me tightly. "Grandma, we brought your favorite turkey sandwiches and those little apple pies you love." I hug her, breathe in the scent of her shampoo, fruity, youthful. "I'm so happy to see you, my dears." We go to the backyard. The old oak table is indeed there. Slightly tilted, the boards darkened by time. The swing is still there, too. Roger made it for little Brandon 30 years ago, sturdy and well-built. Brandon lays the food out on the table. Tiffany spreads a checkered tablecloth. Tracy runs to the swing, sits down, swings, laughs. She still loves to swing, Tiffany says quietly, watching her daughter, even at 16. She says it calms her. I sit down on the bench by the table and watch my family bustle around preparing the picnic. The sun shines through the oak branches, creating patches of light on the grass. It smells like autumn leaves and fresh bread from the basket. Suddenly, Tracy runs up to me, sits down next to me, and takes my hand. "Grandma, Mom said something important yesterday. Do you want to hear it?" I nod. "She said that when my little brother or sister is born, they will name the baby after you. If it's a girl, she'll be Diana. And if it's a boy, well, they'll find some kind of male version. Do you mind?" I look at Tiffany. She is standing at the table, setting out plates, not looking at me. But I see the corners of her lips rise slightly. Not a broad smile, not demonstrative joy. Just a small sign of agreement, of reconciliation. It's not a sincere friendship between us. Not the closeness that would exist in an ideal world between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. But it's peace. Fragile. Cautious. Built on mutual respect and acknowledgement of mistakes. Perhaps this is the only kind of peace possible after what happened between us. After the mud slinging, the lies, the betrayal of trust. "I'll be happy," I say to Tracy, squeezing her hand. "Very happy." Brandon comes over and puts his hand on my shoulder. "Let's go eat, Mom. Everything's ready." We sit down at the table. Me, Brandon, Tiffany, Tracy. We pass plates to each other, laugh at a joke my grandson tells about school. We eat sandwiches and pies, drink lemonade from a thermos. We talk about everyday things. The weather, what needs to be done to prepare for winter, the school play in which Tracy is performing. I look at them. At my son, who is trying to rebuild his marriage. At my daughter-in-law, who is learning to be honest. At my granddaughter, who is gradually growing up and realizing that the world is not black and white. And I understand one thing. I didn't get the perfect ending. I didn't get the happy ending they write about in novels, where everyone hugs, cries with joy, and forgets all the insults. No, there is still tension between us. There are still unspoken things. There are still scars that remind us of what we have been through. But I got something much more important than the perfect ending. I got respect. Tiffany no longer teases me with insidious messages, no longer deletes evidence, no longer tries to make me look crazy. Brandon no longer doubts my sanity, trusts me again. Tracy knows that her grandmother will always be on her side, even if everyone else turns away. And that, in the end, is victory. Not loud, not spectacular, but real. I defended my right to dignity, to be heard and respected. I did not compromise when it meant betraying myself. The sun is high in the sky, its warmth breaking through the last clouds. Tracy runs back to the swing. Brandon helps Tiffany collect the empty plates. I remain seated at the table, looking at this picture. My family imperfect, broken in places, but alive. And suddenly I feel something warm inside. Not complete happiness, not euphoria, just quiet satisfaction. The realization that I did the right thing, that I didn't stay silent when I needed to shout, that I didn't give in when they expected me to be submissive. Tiffany comes over to the table and sits down across from me. For the first time in all these months, she looks me straight in the eye. "Diana, I want to say thank you for not giving up. For not letting me ruin everything for good. I know it will never be the way it could have been between us, but I am grateful that you gave me a chance to at least try to fix something." I look at her for a long time, then I nod. "We all make mistakes, Tiffany. The main thing is to acknowledge them and try not to repeat them. You are trying. That's a lot." She smiles almost imperceptibly and gets up, walking over to Brandon. I remain seated, looking at the sky through the branches of an old oak tree. Roger used to sit here, in this very spot. He would drink coffee, look at the garden, and say, "Dee, life is complicated, but the main thing is not to give up, even when it seems like everything has fallen apart." He was right, as always. And I didn't give up,